Hi guys, this is Max. Welcome to Make It Conscious. This is a show about spiritual growth, psychospiritual growth, to be more specific. Can it get much more specific than that? I mean, it's all about the niche these days, isn't it? You need a niche. I mean, one thing I do is I help people who have been struggling through codependent environments, exploitative cults, workplaces, that kind of thing. But it all hangs off this idea of spiritual growth. And when I scour the internet and check out Instagram and so on, I see a lot of people talking about spirituality or at least claiming to, but I don't see a lot of what I would regard as genuine spiritual growth and authentic spiritual content. And it really inspires me to say what I see and point things out. Because I think we live in the age of spiritual bypassing. We live in the age of abandonment and narcissism and materialism, and these things are all completely antithetical to the growth of consciousness. Now, I'm an optimist. I have hope, because I understand that the more extreme things get, the more refined they get, the more we become lost in the material and the idea of spirituality as opposed to genuine spirituality. The less and less we're going to be satisfied when we discover that what we've been chasing isn't actually the real thing, because we don't understand the unconscious mind. We approach even wisdom from the ancient times with a materialist perspective, and we get ourselves tied up in all kinds of knots because we assume that the Buddha saw the world the way we did. We assume that Jesus saw the world the way we did, and we project this materialist paradigm onto these ancient teachings. And those ancient teachings are ancient teachings. They stay there. We don't need to go back there necessarily. We can draw inspiration from them, but we need to incorporate that into our experiences of the day and our knowledge of the day and keep it moving. So today I'm going to talk about just a little post I found on Instagram by Aubrey Marcus, nonetheless. So I'm sure many of you know who Aubrey is. He is the founder of Onnit, a supplements company. I seem to be on a theme of analysing and pulling apart the posts of guys who own supplement companies. Maybe I should include myself in that category. I also own a supplement company, relatively small one, I must say, significantly smaller than these guys, but there might be something in that. Now, here's a post by Aubrey Marcus. Aubrey Marcus, in my perception at least, is kind of like in many ways, the face of sort of modern Instagram spirituality in many ways. Big Burning Man fan, big psychedelics advocate, this kind of thing, doing a lot of good work in the world. I haven't really heard much of his podcast, but I've seen little clips here and there. But I want to just share this post with you that he made, because I think it really encapsulates a lot of what's going on in my mind at the moment about what I see. And really what this show is all about, to go back to that original point, it's looking at the issues of the day through a psychospiritual lens. And it's not really to pull apart what's going on in the world and to criticize people and to say, that's bad, that's wrong, and this kind of thing. It's actually a way for me to explore and critique my own model of the world, to critique my own ideas around the nature of mind and spirituality and what it means to grow. And so it's really a learning process. It's an iterative process. We're exploring here. We're using our exploration to feed back to our own ideas and assumptions and models of the world and updating that as we go. I think a major lesson for me this last 2 years has been the middle way, finding the middle way, but in a specific area, and that is the middle way between openness, compassion, acceptance, knowing that what you experience is a projection, being part of that. But what that also entails is to balance that against the need to say what you see, call a spade, as we sometimes say in England. And it's not saying that there's a material world out there and it's the problem, we just need to fix it, and we just need to fix and control everything that we disagree with and then we'll be okay. It's absolutely not saying that at all. But what it is saying is that the way to engage with our own minds, the way to discover ourselves, and the way to make ourselves more conscious is to engage with the world. So it's one thing understanding that the world is a projection of ourselves, but if we then take that as meaning that, oh, therefore we just turn the other cheek all the time, we just allow narcissists to walk over us, and we just, walk away from these kinds of exploitative situations and just never do anything about it again, just take the sort of pious, holy high ground and walk on. No, the spiritual path is a middle way between those two things. There is a place for taking action. There's a place for saying what you see, calling it out, and I'm not lumping Aubrey Marcus in with this category of, who I'd consider to be dangerous people, by the way. Like, I've known many dangerous people, and the surprising thing is how quickly they turn into paper tigers when you actually start pushing back. And that's kind of the nature of malevolence, as it is much about dealing in the illusions of fear and attacking you through your own fear. And the nature of spiritual growth is very much about facing your own fear. So on that note, I'm going to dissect a post here by Aubrey Marcus, because he's really a figurehead of modern spirituality in a lot of ways. He really embodies a lot of what people think of as spirituality, or at least certainly personal growth and what it means to be a mature human being. So let's really look at this now and understand if there's any weight in this idea and what he's saying. So here's his post from May by the looks of things, but he's reposted it today or the last couple of days. You want to get back at someone who hurt you? No, not really. If I'm hurt, what does it mean to hurt somebody? To physically hurt somebody? Okay, sure. But then someone walking the path of the sage would understand, well, why did that even happen? Why was I smacked in the face? For example, what led to that situation? He goes on, I think you get the idea. Be happy, laugh, forget the name on accident, orgasm, smile, eat sushi and say wow, play, dance, go bowling with bumpers, trip balls, and make art. Loving your life is the only revenge. Middle finger. So here's the thing. This is a way of dealing with an inner conflict. It's a way of rationalizing, reconciling two opposing points of view and sets of conditioning. One is that to truly move on means letting go. But there's another part that says there's still an emotion here that's unresolved. And I don't want to go there because it hurts. So what do? We make ourselves look like we've moved on. And that way we can gratify both, right? We can gratify both needs that way. We can feel like we've moved on, albeit temporarily. And we don't have to go near the painful feeling that we'd rather not look at. But of course, what this means is that rather than discovering the self and looking within, expanding consciousness, we become trapped in a particular area because we've come to mistake the symbol of something for the real thing, the image of moving on for actually moving on. He goes on, when the hateful make you hate them, they have won. When the malicious evoke your malice, they have won. Don't let them win. Trust your boundaries and love your life. That's how you say middle finger. Now, of course, the great contradiction here is that if you need to show that you've moved on, you haven't really moved on. if you're still thinking in terms of winning and losing, you haven't won anything. If you're still feeling the need to point your middle finger up at somebody, you haven't seen the truth. You're still bypassing your own need to look at your unresolved emotions. And there's nothing wrong with emotions. And there's nothing wrong or bad with unresolved emotions. And in fact, when we go there and we feel them through and let them run their course in our conscious mind, this truth just becomes plain as day. It's undeniable that when you see things clearly, it is impossible to be hateful. No one can make you hateful. The mind generates feelings that we call hatred, that we call anger. It is our mind that does it. And yes, it arises from the unconscious. It arises from conflict that occurs in the mind. And yes, other people can activate that conflict. They can draw that out. They can create the conditions that cause that to happen. But then one asks, what did I do to lead them to create the conditions for that to happen? Like, we're always putting ourselves in these situations because it's all us, right? There's nothing that appears outside the self. So even these people that you want to show that, you know, you're living this joyful life and you've moved on, they're part of you. And this isn't just a belief, this is empirically true. You know, a neuroscientist might say, oh, well, all you're experiencing is neurons firing in your brain or something like that. Or you're experiencing various cocktails of neurotransmitters in varying proportions, stress hormones and so on. But what are these things, right? These are all objects that appear in consciousness. These are all sights, right? These are all deductions, thoughts. They're all representations of a psychic reality. And any materiality about them is merely an inference. It can only be. And so anybody who makes you hate them is a part of your own mind. They can only be part of your own mind. And they're showing up as a way to point something out about one's own mind, about your own mind, that you haven't yet seen. And like I say, there's nothing wrong or bad about not seeing something. We've all got an unconscious. It's the line between that unconscious and the conscious mind that gives life any meaning at all. So the idea that we need to become as conscious as possible, as quickly as possible, is again acting out of fear. It's again something we're not seeing in the unconscious mind that we don't want to feel, we don't want to experience. So someone walking the path of the sage who is practicing habit 1, which is take responsibility for your mind, when met with something displeasing, they're not going to try and counteract that with a persona or try to show the world how happy they are, how much they're laughing, accidentally on purpose forgetting their name, etc. What they're going to do is they're going to ask themselves a few questions. They're either going to do it explicitly and deliberately, or as it becomes a habit over time, this is just something that will happen naturally. They understand that if some unwholesomeness has occurred, if someone's done something malicious, and by the way, it's not clear here, this is another slight objection I have to this post and why I think it's not especially helpful. What does it mean to say someone who hurt you? Because that could be something that we just merely didn't like, it could be a deliberate intention to harm, or it could just be, something that something someone did that we just didn't like purely because of our own shallow material. So there's some differentiation to occur there, but no matter how egregious it was, like even if they literally just physically attacked us unprovoked, the sage is going to ask a series of questions. They're going to ask, why is this a problem for me? And this isn't excusing anything. It's not saying that, oh, well, it's just a projection, therefore I'm going to just let it go. Like, if we find ourselves saying, oh, just let it go, that's spiritual bypassing, right? Spiritual bypassing is a way to not feel an emotion. Things can only be let go of once the emotion is felt through. What goes down must come up, right? It's very much the case with the mind. There's a kind of potential energy to feeling and emotions, and if our mind is knocked with a degree of energy, think of it that way, and it's not fully conscious, it leaves an imprint in the mind that remains unconscious until it's realised. So it's a physical necessity that it must happen at some point. And this raises all kinds of questions, I know. But the questions you might want to ask in this kind of situation are, why is this a problem for me? What does this tell me about my own mind? What am I not seeing? What am I craving? In Aubrey's case, it seems like it might be sushi. And what am I pushing away? So, there's a lot being pushed away here. And it does surprise me somewhat, because I know, Aubrey's a big fan of psychedelics and is often talking about the benefits of unity and the reality of oneness and so on. But this post completely contradicts that apparent view of the world. So, I think there's a persona-shadow dynamic going on here, and I think it's important to say this kind of thing, because people are seeing this and they believe it's helpful life advice, and it simply isn't. So, probably very few people will see this, but I just felt inspired to point that out. And I think, again, it's a reflection of the general kind of zeitgeist as it comes to spirituality and personal growth and so on. Personal growth is more than building a persona. I would go so far as to say that building a persona is a distraction from genuine growth. It's a way to do something that looks like growth as a way of avoiding the real growth. And the real growth is where all the benefits are. And the real growth is to make the unconscious conscious. None of this stuff makes the unconscious conscious in the way that he's suggesting it is done here. Want to get back at someone who hurt you? ? There's some far more useful advice that could be offered in regards to that question. Why do you want to get back at them, right? It all starts there. And so, just checking out some of the comments now. So much yes. Bolding with the bumpers, epic flex. Not entirely sure what that means. But this one I did like, from Mock and Rate. How about not getting back? How about going within to dive deep into your shadows and creating reconciliation with yourself and the other? Perhaps that person who hurt you is also hurt. Or maybe you hurt them and you don't know it. I somewhat agree. Shoving your happiness in someone's face comes from the ego. And if that's what you're doing, then you're not truly happy. You're just bypassing your shit. Said with love and desire for change in the world. So I sort of agree with that 75%. still some things I would change there, but I think it's on the right track, and I think it's a much needed counter to what he's saying. There's very, very few other people saying things like that. A lot of this is sort of slang that I don't really understand. Bars and then a fire emoji. I think I'm out of touch with this world of internet stuff these days. I mean, I sort of feel like I used to get it, but now it's just a lot of stuff I just don't, to be honest. And I don't know if that's such a bad thing. So there we are, guys. Look, I hope that was useful, and I hope that was, just made you think a bit differently. Can I really make you think differently, though? Something to ask yourself. Let's leave that there.